What's up, buddy?
Not a lot, man. How are you?
I'm good. Now, do you want it up and down like this or horizontal?
I you look like John Corabi. It's fine.
Okay, awesome.
All right. So I've had a listen to the new record. Holy shit, dude.
Uh, You like it?
Yeah, I love it. I love the fact that there's going to be so many people that aren't going to realize where these songs came from because they're so used to the commercialized versions. Like I did like a deep dive. So like the very first track, the Muddy Waters track, I was like, oh, I think I know that song. And then I found Paul Rogers doing it live in Montreux. And I
Okay.
was and I was like, oh fuck, like
It's a bit
okay.
different than it's a bit different than our version.
Yeah, exactly. But you think about it and you go, I know where Led Zeppelin came from. I know where Cream came from. I know where like Foghat came from.
Yeah, you know what's funny? Like after doing this record, we all kind of, because I got to be honest with you, like other than the fact that like we heard these songs, or you hear songs like how many more times, or feel like making love, by, or not feel like making, I just want to make love to you by Foghat.
Yeah.
These are all old blues standards, the Aerosmith, Walking the Dog, Born Under a Bad Sign. But, like me personally, I never really heard the original versions
Yep.
until I heard a lot of I mean, there were some American artists as well, but it was mainly the British, like rock guys, like uh, the Rolling Stones, and I mean the Beatles to a degree. Uh, Obviously Zeppelin, Free, Humble Pie, Foghat, like all those bands kind of had all this stuff, this American made
Yep.
art form, went overseas, and then they tore it apart and made it their own, and it came back over to America via the British invasion.
Yep.
And that's when I became aware of, Cream's version of Crossroads, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's funny how it worked out. But, um, we've kind of been really looked at, like now that we did the record, we're all like diving into the blues and stuff. And it's just hilarious. Like, not a lot of American artists back in the 60s, 70s even acknowledged, like
Yeah.
really acknowledged the blues. You know what I mean? Other than maybe Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, in their own way, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, but it wasn't like just mainstream
Yeah.
until the British guys got a hold of it and brought it back over. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Well, it's true because I'm 50 this year, so I missed the late 60s, early 70s stuff. I came in late 70s was when I started getting exposed to rock music through older
Yeah.
siblings and things. But the track that stands out for me is Going Down, Jeff Beck. The first time I actually heard that was with two old bandmates of yours, Bruce and Eric, when they did their clinic run down here when you guys were forming Union. They did a
Yeah,
clinic
yeah,
run
yeah.
down here and they did Going Down. And Eric sang and Bruce played, and I was just like, that's the greatest fucking song ever. And I remember saying to Bruce, like, I can't believe I've never heard that song before. And he's like, well, it's because you're as old as you are, you know?
Yeah.
And then
But
you,
yeah, it's weird. Like you listen to Jeff Beck's version, but then, obviously when we decided to do this, we really just went in and did a deep dive and tried to find as many different versions as we could and hear them and kind of go, okay, well, that one's pretty cool. That one's, nobody really knows about this, or you know what I mean?
yeah,
One of the songs, it's funny, we were talking about doing it, we didn't do, was the song that's on Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. It's called In My Time of Dying,
Mm-hmm.
which I can't remember who the artist is that recorded it first, but it was actually called Jesus Make My Dying Bed. That's
Right.
what it started out as. And then it became, you know, just through osmosis, it became like In My Time of Dying. But it was funny when we were researching it, I didn't even realize it, but there's an early Bob Dylan version
Right.
of In My Time of Dying. And it's fucking amazing. It's really good. If you get a chance after we get done here, you should
Yeah.
check it out.
Yeah.
It's a really cool version of this old blues standard. And you know, so it was fun doing this record, man. It kind of enlightened me to a lot of shit that I wasn't really aware of.
Yeah, same here, and especially Black Betty. So Black Betty, I remember came out. I think it was like late '70s. The Ram Jam version came out and it was popped
Yes.
up. And then we had a band here in the early maybe 2000s called Spiderbait. That they're still around,
Uh-huh.
but they had a massive hit with their cover. You know, like it was monstrous. It sort of launched them. But then I love
But
the
they were a little more on the industrial side, right?
like a grungy industrial. So like they
Yeah,
were,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I heard that version, yeah.
yeah,
And then there was a couple of girls a year or two ago that did a version of it, but they're more like Americana or country western.
yeah.
Um,
Yours
but
is,
you know what's funny? Up until recently, like if you go back past the Ram Jam version,
yeah,
like all those old versions of Lead Belly and all those old cats that were, there's no music to that song. It's just like a stomp,
yep,
and they're going, "Whoa, Black Betty, bam, lamb, whoa." It sounds like they're in a field just singing and
yeah.
picking cotton. You know what I mean? There was no music at all. So we were like, it was kind of weird, for a lack of a better term. Like when we were doing the record, we would kind of ask ourselves, uh, only because, again, like Zeppelin's version of In My Time of Dying is just brilliant.
Yeah.
And then the other song that a lot of people don't realize that they did not write is When the Levee Breaks.
Hmm.
Um, you know, what they did is, I can't remember, there was two writers on it. One of them was named Memphis Minnie, and they wrote the song in 1929. After the Mississippi River, there was a huge flood in like 1927, and song, and then 50 years later, or you know, whatever it was, 43 years later, 44 years later, Zeppelin gets a hold of it. They rewrote the music completely, but they kept the melody
Yeah.
and the lyrics. So if you look at that record, Zeppelin 4,
Yep.
and you look at the credits on When the Levee Breaks, it says Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Bonham, John Paul Jones, and Memphis Minnie.
Right.
So they just brilliantly took this old song. So that was another one that we were like, oh, you know, but what will we do with it? It's such a fucking classic Zeppelin. It was, they did it perfectly.
Yep.
And so what we would do is, with all these songs, we would just ask ourselves, like, what would Zeppelin do?
Hmm.
Like, how can we make this completely different? What would Zeppelin do? How can we make this different?
Yep. It's funny.
And I think for most of the songs, we kind of say, what now?
I was going to say, like, with most of the songs you've done to me, you've done a sort of a bit of tribute to the modern day version mixed with the original version and then daisied it.
You
Yeah.
know this, like every record we've always done, we've always done a tip of the hat
Yep.
to our favorite 70s bands. And now what we did is we went back a generation further
Yeah.
and tipped the hat to the guys that actually wrote the songs. But it's funny, all the songs we picked were songs that we heard or became aware of
Yep.
because of the 70s guys.
Yeah.
So like Crossroads, for example, was Cream, Leonard Skinner. Uh, Born Under a Bad Sign was Cream and Pat Travers.
Yep.
You know, Walking the Dog, obviously Aerosmith. Well, BB King's song was, you know, that one's a classic. But you know, all these songs, you know, even Sweet Home Chicago,
Yeah.
Foghat did that. You know what I mean? So we were like, it was just like, okay, let's do the songs that people are probably kind of familiar with, but we'll do our versions of them.
Yeah, and that's a funny thing. Like when you do a deep dive on these songs, like, I urge everyone when they listen to the albums, actually, not that you can believe everything you read on Wikipedia, but sometimes it's a really good source of information. Like the John Lee Hooker song, Boom Boom, apparently when it was very first recorded, was like 168 beats a minute. And it was like this weird hand clap stomp. Like it just like
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like it should be like a death metal version, really. But like when you think about the fact of back when they wrote these songs, they were pretty much glorified campfire songs. You can
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's weird when we did that one. Um, we kind it's funny if you listen to it because somebody pegged it last week. They're like, this has got a very Creedence Clearwater Revival feel to it,
yeah, yeah.
and you know, but it's funny if you listen to. There's a reference to Boom Boom in the Creedence song Susie Q.
Right.
And,
Okay.
and if you listen to it, the lyrics, he's like, "Oh, Susie Q, baby, I love you, Susie Q. I like the way you walk." You know what I mean? I
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
way you talk. My Susie Q.
yeah.
So we were laughing at first. We couldn't think of what to do with it, and then we just said, "Fuck it." We just started laughing. Obviously, we were drinking,
Yep.
but we just said, "You know what? Fuck it. Let's do it like Susie Q."
Yeah.
So we did.
The thing that I can already hear with this album, sorry to give you more work, but I can see like a campfire version of this album coming out, like a live version of it where you just sort of find a venue and strip it right back. I can already see it happening.
Well, we can't strip it too much more than it already is, to be honest with you, because um, other than some of the overdubs we did with Michael's harmonica,
Hmm.
which I've got some I've got some work to do because I have to learn these parts that he did.
Yep.
But I mean the whole record, we really kind of recorded the whole thing in like 9 days when we were at Fame.
Yep.
Um, so a lot of it is just live off the floor. Like once we had an arrangement, we'd figure it out
Yep.
and then just hit record and just go for it. We may have done like a take or two, but it's just really all of us just playing right off the floor.
Yep.
So it ain't going to get much more stripped down than it already is.
Awesome. Now, tell me about Fame Studios. It has to have been like a pretty wicked vibe when you walked in there.
Ah, dude. Well, you know what's funny is there is a little bit of lineage between Marti Frederiksen and Fame Studios.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know if you've ever seen on Netflix the documentary on the Muscleshoals sound.
No.
If you get a chance, you should watch it. It's really interesting. But so I always wondered on the last verse of Leonard Skinner's Sweet Home Alabama, they always said Muscleshoals has got the Swampers. And they picked me up with a song or two. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? When I was a kid, I'm like, what does that mean? Well, once I saw the documentary, I realized that Fame Studios started, and there was like these local guys that would just come in there, and they were like session guys.
Yep.
There was a keyboard player, a guitar player, drummer, bass player, like, you know, and they would just come in, some horns, whatever was needed, but they were all local guys, and they wound up playing on so many different records, and they started calling them the Swampers.
Right.
So they played on Aretha Franklin, Wilson Pickett, like Otis Redding, like all these different cats. They were on like a lot of blues and R&B stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then oddly enough, Dwayne Allman from the Allman Brothers,
Yep.
before they became the Allman Brothers, he actually camped out there because he's like, I want to play with those cats. And they were the ones that discovered him.
Wow.
Like Dwayne Allman just like pitched a tent or some shit, was sleeping in their parking lot. Like, I want to play with these guys.
Yeah.
And they went in and he played for them, and they were like, fuck, this guy's amazing. And he wound up doing all of the guitar solos on a Wilson Pickett version of Hey Jude.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. You got to watch the thing. Anyway, Aretha Franklin, all these people do this thing. They wind up getting super popular, super busy. And a couple of the guys from that whole team,
Yep.
they left and started a studio across town in Muscleshoals,
Yep.
started their own studio. And at that studio, they became very famous as well. And that's where the Rolling Stones recorded Gimme Shelter. They did Wild Horses.
Wow.
Bob Seger recorded there, Rod Stewart, Elton John, like all these people recorded at the other one, like between both places.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, after the second one becomes famous, a couple of the guys go to Nashville and they start a studio called Quad,
Right. Yep.
which when Marty moved to Nashville, he bought that studio
Wow.
and he changed it to Sienna,
Yep.
Sienna, whatever his daughter's name is. He changed the name of the studio, and that's where we recorded Make Some Noise, Burn It Down, and Light 'Em Up.
That's crazy.
So, and then even his studio, there's rooms in that studio that like I know the room that we recorded Light 'Em Up in is the same room that Neil Young recorded Harvest in. And I mean, the list is just, yeah. So there was always that lineage between Marty's and the first studios.
Yeah.
So we left Marty's and we went to the first place, and we were going to do some writing and recording, and we wound up, you know, we did some of that for the Light 'Em Up record, but we also did the blues record, and then we went back to Marty's and finished up the Light 'Em Up record. You know what I mean?
It's all fucking like when you think about it now, like you can understand why Daisies Records have such a good vibe.
You know, it's just a lot of it too is the rooms, the characters of the rooms, uh like this last record, Light 'Em Up, we did it in the Neil Young room. We didn't even know that was there because for the first couple of years that Marty had that place, or first 4 or 5 years, he was renting part of his building to a publishing company and they were using that studio. So we never saw it.
Right.
But their lease was up. They moved out. And Marty's like, "Hey, dude, you got to check this room out, man. This is where Neil Young recorded Harvest." And there was somebody else. It was Neil Young, and I don't know if it was Joan Baez or like one of those, like, one of those legendary
Yep.
artists from the 60s and 70s. But a lot of people have recorded in that studio as well. And so it was kind of a bucket list thing for us to go down to Fame Studios,
Yep.
see that room. And I highly recommend to anybody that sees this, uh, you know, if you ever get down to the south of America, go to Alabama, go to Muscleshoals, because the studio, even though it's a functioning studio, it's a
Mhm.
museum as well.
Right.
So they do little tours and stuff, and you can see the microphone that, Aretha Franklin used to record Respect or whatever, you know what I mean?
Wow.
The pianos that, and then they got another room off to the side, and it's like, oh yeah, this is where the Allman Brothers was formed, in this room. And this guy Spence, he was like, yeah, man, a couple times before they would go on tour, a couple of their tours, they came here and they rehearsed for like a month before they went out on the road. And
Oh,
so it's really got a good vibe. And it was one of those pinch me places. You
yep.
know what I mean?
Music nerd heaven for me. All right. So you guys are going to go out Europe and the UK, June and August. Um, what else is planned? Is there anything in the books?
Yeah, I mean, they're still working on stuff. Honestly, I don't concern myself with, you know, I just get an email and they go, hey dude, we're leaving last week of May and we're going to Europe or we're going to England or we're going to Australia or whatever, okay, great. And I just start getting ready and you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's that where we play and when we play is above my pay grade.
You just show up.
I just show up and do my thing and, maybe have a drink with everybody afterwards and out the door I go.
So what's the plan for you then? Are you working on new tunes?
Actually, that's what I was doing earlier. I took a break for a minute to do this interview, but um, obviously the Daisies we're getting this record is just getting ready to come out. I think it's May 30th.
It is. Yep.
Um, so we're gonna tour on this for a minute, but I just signed a thing to do a new solo record.
Right.
So I'm actually in my studio trying to get reacquainted with everything again. It's been a while. I've been on tour, and it's one of those things. The Pro
Yep.
Tools, I fucking forget how to do shit. So then I got to sit there for an hour and go, okay, I'm hearing the drums here, but why can't I get the MIDI keyboard thing to trigger the
Yep.
drums? You know what I mean? So I'm just whatever. But I'm actually in the process of doing that right now.
Perfect. And I noticed you shared our post the other day where we said it was unbelievably 25
You're
years since that MIT gig. You
the
got
what
me?
now?
When you did the MIT gig for the Blue Room. So that was 25
Yeah,
years.
I just saw that.
Yeah,
Somebody posted that the other day, and I was like, "Holy shit!" You know what's crazy, dude? Like, I know I did a couple of uh live records or whatever, best of, but I just realized, like, when you sit down and you go, okay, 1990, I got my first record deal.
yep,
So that's fuck 30 35 years ago. Is that
yep,
right?
yep,
90, 2000? Yeah,
yep.
35 years ago. And it was funny. I completely forgot about whatever, the best of, again, a greatest hits record. But once I get this solo record done, I'll literally have written or recorded 21 records in
Wow.
the last 35 years.
That's fucking cool.
It's fucking insane, dude.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm like sitting there going, where did the time go? Like, it doesn't seem like that long ago that I was
No.
like, yes, man, I got my first record deal. You know what I mean? And here I am, like, I'm talking to you 35 years later, 21 records later, 20 records later. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Aren't you glad that you didn't sign with Gene Simmons and let him change the name of your band?
Well,
I've heard the name.
trust me, Gene Simmons busts my balls every time he sees me. You know, and he'll go, John Corabi, Angora, worst name in history. Eight ball,
Yep.
eight ball. And I'm like, but he
Yeah.
also loves this song that I had called Hey Operator. And he's like, that's the best song you've ever written in your life. And I go, yeah, I noticed because it shortly thereafter became Domino, but whatever.
Ooh. And it's actually pretty true.
No, it didn't. Those songs are nothing like each other.
No.
But even Bruce laughed. I told him that story, and he goes, "What are you talking about?" So I played him "Hey Operator," and he heard the
Yep.
and he goes, "Holy shit!" It's there. It's not the same chords.
It's a vibe.
It's not the same song. It's just that vibe. You know what I mean?
It's
And
literally Hey Operator and Nasty Nasty from Black and Blue mixed together.
well, there you have it.
Gene at his best.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think about that, like when I posted that MIT show, and you're in a room full of, apparently there's like because it's a technical school, a bunch of kids, and I'm watching Union sing Who Do You Think You Are, and proudly yell motherfucker into the microphone in front of a room full of kids. And I'm just like, I wonder what those kids are doing now.
No, but it really wasn't like young kids.
Mm,
It was like it was more like, 17, 18, 19,
yep.
20, 25, just younger people that were going to that school to
Yeah.
learn how to be Yngwie Malmsteen. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like it was a room full of, first graders.
That would have been great.
I may have altered the lyrics at that point,
Yeah.
but it was actually during the NAM show as well.
Yep.
So there was a lot of people from NAM that were there. So it wasn't you know it wasn't like kids there, other than Ian. But
Yeah. So, mate, the album's out May 30. It's actually a really great collection, and I really want everyone, when they listen to it, to then deep dive and really learn the history of these songs other than the commercialized versions that we probably all know, because there's some really great stories behind it all. And when you hear these songs in their original form and then you hear the Daisy songs, like for me, I really know where someone like ZZ Top came from, you know?
yeah, the Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan,
Yeah.
Joe Bonamassa, I said ZZ Top, but like, um, Humble Pie, Free, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones. I mean, the list is Rory Gallagher. Just all these great Gary Moore. Um, but it's as I said earlier, it was, I think, an underappreciated American art form until the Brits got a hold of it and kind of reworked it and made it their own, and then sent it back over to America in form of 70s rock. You know what I mean?
Exactly. All right, man, I'm going to let you go back to your recording. I'm going to get on with my day. I reckon you should write a new song on the new album called Eight Ball and just credit it to Gene. I think it'd be great. You'll love it.
I'm gonna pass on that, buddy.
All right, man. You take
I
care.
don't need Gene Simmons and his piles of money suing me for anything.
Nah, just take some of it. Hopefully we see you down here soon, man. Either solo or
I
with
know.
Daisy.
I was just talking to David Edwards about this, and I was kidding with him, but I said, you know what, dude? Like, I said, how is it possible? You know, Dead Daisies started as this Australian
Supergroup.
American whatever, and I said the Americans just kind of pissed all over the idea, and now it's like this American band. I go, I don't know if they went down there with Glenn, but I go, we haven't been there since we did that Kiss run in 2015.
Yep.
And I'm like, dude, we need to go. Like, I went down and did that acoustic run when my book came out, and I had a fucking blast.
Yeah.
You know, but again, like, I understand management. They were like, you know, Australia is really difficult because of there's all this extra shit, visas, getting the gear there, getting the crew. Like, we've got, you know, I mean, it's like we're literally flying with like 12 or 13 people,
Yeah.
hotels. And then when you get to Australia, really, if you think about it, you can only do, I mean, that's if you do Perth.
Yeah.
How many shows are 5, 6 shows?
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, how do you, they're trying to figure out how to financially make that work. I believe that they have been talking to Danny at Silverback about trying to figure something out and get us down there. So fingers crossed. Hopefully we can come back and you know, get to see our Australian entourage or the Australian mafia when we get there. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's us. Awesome, man.
Yes.
I'll see you soon, or I'll talk to you soon. Take it easy. All the best. Love to the
All
family
right,
and all that
buddy.
stuff.
You too.
See you, man.
All right, buddy.
Bye.
Late. Bye.